Haunted Dinah, 30 years of sinister loyalty revealed as she serves her master his wife's heart. Richard Whittaker stood at the edge of darkness, a whirlwind of anxiety clawing at him like a wild animal. His charming colonial home could easily be mistaken for the epitome of suburban bliss. Yet, beneath the manicured grass and picket fences lingered a shadow. A housekeeper named Dinah, whose unwavering loyalty hid sinister intentions. Richard had no idea that she had watched his every move. The whispers of Elmwood crept closer, wrapping around his choking dread like a serpent tightening its grip. Every time Richard slipped into his late-night escapades, he felt Dinah's watchful eyes tracking him, snatching fragments of his soul with deliberate precision. The murmur of rumors ignited behind closed doors, igniting sinister fires of speculation. Each cup of coffee served by Dinah felt tainted, as did the laughter that echoed through the halls. Eleanor, his unsuspecting wife, munched on brunch with false security, while the air simmered with unspoken tension, heavy and foreboding. That Saturday, the sun poured through the kitchen window, yet Eleanor sensed a storm brewing. Dinah lingered, her gaze penetrating and cold, lingering just long enough to freeze the warm breakfast banter. Her demeanor twisted, and Eleanor's heart raced. What dark secrets lay beneath the surface? But that fateful day began with a banality masked as routine. Hours ticked by. Eleanor was granted no real time. At first, Richard chalked up her absence to a hot-tempered departure, a chance to cool off after yet another lie had spilled from his lips like poisonous ivy. But panic surged when evening cloaked Elmwood like a shroud, and Eleanor's absence morphed from peace into despair. "Call the police, please!" He felt like he was losing his grip, his heart racing uncontrollably. The officer shrugged, brushing him off with casual dismissals. "Just need some space." Darkness deepened, gnawing at his insides. Visions of their perfect life morphed into grotesque monsters. He wandered through the house, a doppelganger of fear. The creaks of the floors seemed amplified. The shadows danced dangerously close to him. What if she had truly gone? What if Dinah's impeccable loyalty concealed something foul? The hairs on his neck stood at attention as fear flicked through his bloodstream like fire. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Richard felt a wave of nausea as he remembered the rumors of the housekeeper's curse. Dinah, a puppet master, pulling strings while pretending to hold their family together. The stories surfaced, dark flashes of sacrificial pacts interwoven into their home's fabric. His thoughts spiraled. Had she orchestrated everything? Anxiety pulsed through Richard as he approached the door. The doorbell echoed, staccato against his racing heart. A creeping dread settled in his gut. What if the truth lay on the other side, waiting for him like a predator poised to strike? The breath hitched in his throat. He hesitated, fear gripping him like a vice. What had Dinah prepared for him? What secrets would the malicious keeper of their home reveal? The door stood firmly between him and an unbearable revelation, looming menacingly as shadows of his hastily shattered life flickered in the space around him. Richard opened the door, heart pounding, and found himself face to face with a flickering streetlight illuminating a figure. It was Garrett, the neighbor, his expression carved from concern and confusion. "Hey, Richard, you all right? I just heard some shouting." Garrett's voice faded, replaced by the heavy silence that cloaked the night. "Eleanor's missing!" Richard blurted, desperation spilling from him like a broken dam. "She didn't come home from brunch." Garrett's face paled, the shadows under his eyes deepening. "Have you checked the entire house?" "I've checked everywhere," Richard shot back, limbs trembling with a mix of dread and fury. The neighbors had always thought him a provider, a loving husband. But here he stood, a man tangled in a web of his own lies. "I'll help you search the yard," Garrett offered, stepping inside uninvited. Each footfall echoed dreadfully loud, like a death knell on Richard's already frayed nerves. They moved through the dimly lit house, spreading the tension like an invisible fog. The yard was quiet, eerie in the crisp night air. Crickets chirped, oblivious to Richard's escalating fear. The moon was full, casting unsettling shadows that danced beneath the trees, as if mocking him. "Richard," Garrett hissed suddenly, pointing toward the old shed in the far corner. "You know she loved exploring that place as a kid." Richard's stomach twisted into knots. Memories flooded back of Eleanor giggling as she shared stories of her adventures there, before they got busy living their picture-perfect life. The shed had remained untouched, a forgotten relic of fancy. "Let's check it," Richard muttered, dread spilling over like an unwelcome guest. He led the way, each step heavy with desperation. As he reached for the door, a chill sliced through him. He could feel it, Dinah's presence lurking near, her shrouded intentions echoes that chased him faintly in the wind. The door creaked open. Inside, the darkness seemed to swell, its breath damp and musty, clinging to Richard like a shroud. Garrett hesitated, glancing back with uncertainty, his pulse quickening. "Wait here," Richard whispered, needling his way into the suffocating gloom. Instinct wove through him, urging him forward, but his heart raced violently against its cage. The darkness thickened as he stumbled deeper inside. He felt the weight of eyes upon him, malicious and calculating. With every breath he waded into the unknown, a desperate soldier moving toward an unseen enemy. Then he saw it. A small gleam caught his eye. A shimmer in the abyss. Richard squinted and stepped closer, heart thudding like a tribal drum. There, atop an old dusty trunk, lay a small box. Delicate and unassuming, yet it hummed with an unholy energy that made his skin crawl. A sudden jolt of realization struck him. What if it held answers? What if it had something to do with Dinah? "Richard, you okay?" Garrett called, pulling him from his trance. "Yes," he shouted back, barely aware of his own voice, as dread clawed at him, suffocating. "Just give me a sec. I think I found something." He reached for the box, breath hitching, and noticed a name etched sharply into the surface. Eleanor. A gasp slipped from his lips. This couldn't be good. Whatever lay inside was a dark puzzle piece he hadn't been prepared to find. Then came the sound. A soft shuffling outside the shed, a rustling against the walls, followed by the unmistakable whisper of fabric skimming against wood. Richard froze, heart pounding as fear gripped him like icy fingers. "Richard!" Garrett shouted again, urgency in his voice. "Richard!" he shouted back, barely aware of his own voice, as dread clawed at him, suffocating. "Just give me a sec. I think I found something." He reached for the box, breath hitching, and noticed a name etched sharply into the surface. Eleanor. A gasp slipped from his lips. This couldn't be good. Whatever lay inside was a dark puzzle piece he hadn't been prepared to find. Then came the sound. A soft shuffling outside the shed, a rustling against the walls, followed by the unmistakable whisper of fabric skimming against wood. Richard froze, heart pounding as fear gripped him like icy fingers. "Richard!" Garrett shouted again, urgency in his voice. We're not alone." Richard turned, eyes wide, the box cradled in his hands like a forbidden relic, uncertain of what horror danced just beyond the light. What other nightmares had Dinah conjured? What secrets lay entangled in shadows, waiting to be unleashed? "Get back inside," he barked, just as the whispers grew louder, dread descending like a weight on his shoulders. As Garrett stepped back, the door slammed shut behind him, trapping Richard in total darkness, or worse. What lay outside the shed? What unspeakable truth awaited Richard in that moment? Bigger questions loomed ominously, clawing at his sanity as a chilling laugh echoed through the silence, sending shivers racing down his spine. What had Dinah truly prepared? What devastating secrets did the darkness hold? Richard's breath quickened as the laughter melded with the whispers, twisting around him like a malevolent vine. The shed felt alive, pulsating with a terrible weight. Panic clawed at his throat as he clutched the box tighter, every instinct screaming to leave, but a force beyond his comprehension held him in place. The shadow seemed eager, creeping closer, as the laughter subsided into an unsettling stillness. Unsure if he was losing his mind, or if the spirits of the past were pulling him into their web, Richard squeezed his eyes shut, attempting to banish the encroaching darkness. "Eleanor!" he shouted, the name leaping from his lips like a lifeline thrown into the abyss. Silence swallowed his words. Sweat trickled down his back, the air thick with anticipation. What if she was nearby, trapped just beyond the wooden walls? A shiver raced across his skin, as if he could feel her presence, both near and yet impossibly far away. As Richard dared to open his eyes, an icy breeze burst through the cracks. The box glimmered with an almost inviting glow, calling him. His curiosity fought against every rational instinct. It was dangerous, like poking a beast with a stick. But Eleanor's name stirred something in him, a flicker of hope pierced by fear. Richard slowly approached the box, drawn in by its secretive allure. What lay inside? His heart thudded as he brushed the lid, feeling the grooves carved into the wood, a rough, undulating surface echoing the urgency of his pulse. Then came a thud, a loud, solid thud from outside the shed. It jolted Richard from his focus. He pressed his ear to the door, the splintered wood trembling as he strained to listen. The rustling had transformed into frantic movements, as if someone or something was trying to get in. "Richard!" Garrett's voice came again, this time tinged with sheer panic. "We can't stay out here. We need to get out, now!" The door rattled, a surge of desperation pulsing through Garrett's words. Richard's body hummed, torn between the box and his friend outside, the terror of what might emerge from the shadows compelling him to act. "I'm coming!" Richard shouted back, and with a final glance at the box, he yanked open the door. But as he stepped out, he was met with a jarring scene. The yard lay still, cloaked in a heavy fog that obscured everything within. Garrett stood just a few feet away, eyes wide as he pointed toward the woods. "Look!" he warned, his voice a strangled whisper. Richard followed his gaze and froze. There, at the edge of the yard, stood a figure cloaked in darkness, the mismatched silhouette eerily familiar. It was difficult to tell if it was a man or woman, the features indistinguishable as it stood motionless, watching. "Is that?" Garrett started but couldn't finish his thought. "No," Richard rasped, dread pooling in his stomach. "It can't be Dinah." The figure tilted its head, as if amused by their fear. The stillness thickened, creeping along Richard's skin like the icy breath of death. And suddenly the memory of the laughter twisted inside him. "Eleanor!" he shouted again, desperation fueling his voice as he took a tentative step towards the figure. He felt rage boiling over the fear. "What have you done to her?" The figure remained silent, its unmoving posture suggesting an ominous certainty. Then a sudden rush of movement broke the tension. It lunged toward him with inhuman speed, leaving Richard gasping as he scrambled back, every instinct roaring for him to escape. "Run!" Garrett shouted, but Richard stood frozen, his gaze locked on the advancing entity, questions swirling in his mind like storm clouds. What were those secrets Dinah had awakened? What had he unleashed? As the shadowed figure closed in, a piercing scream erupted from the woods, a sound that shattered the night and echoed with haunting familiarity. And then everything went dark. What had happened to Richard? What fate awaited him entwined with Dinah's dark secrets? The answer loomed on the horizon, but one thing was clear. The darkness had only just begun to unfold its horrific tale. Richard blinked awake, drenched in sweat. The darkness enveloped him like a thick fog, wrapping itself around his limbs and squeezing the breath from his lungs. Where was he? The phantom echoes of that dreadful scream still reverberated in his mind, clawing at his sanity. He took in his surroundings. He was no longer in the shed. He lay on cold, damp earth, surrounded by dense, twisted trees. The air was acrid, tinged with an odd metallic scent that made his stomach churn. His pulse raced as he lifted himself from the ground, palms pressed against the wet soil. Panic gnawed at him. He pushed himself to his feet, wiping mud off his clothes, the chill of the night sinking into his bones. "Garrett?" Richard called, his voice trembling as it cut through the stifling silence. No answer. Just the hollow rustle of leaves above him, a sound almost mocking in its tranquility. He took a step forward, confusion battling with fear. Where was his friend? What had happened just moments before? The memories were jumbled, like pieces of a broken mirror scattering at his feet, reflecting fragments of terror. He glanced toward the dense trees. The shadows writhed with an unnatural life, and he felt it. Eyes upon him. Instinctively he turned, scanning for signs of the figure who had leaped toward him. It had vanished, but its presence lingered, a toxic whisper curling around his mind, urging him to run. "Garrett!" he shouted again, desperation clawing at his throat. He would find his friend. They had to find a way out of this nightmare. But the woods offered no response except the rustling of branches and the distant croak of unseen creatures. His heart raced as he pushed deeper into the forest, hoping for a path, hoping to escape the suffocating grasp of the night. It felt alive, almost sentient. Then he stumbled upon an uneven clearing, the ground littered with fallen branches and wildflowers that stood out against the oppressive dark. In the center sat a small circle of stones, each one meticulously placed, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Richard stepped closer, an inexplicable pull drawing him toward the strange arrangement. Among the stones lay a small rusted dagger. The blade glimmered ominously, and a chill ran down Richard's spine. He knew instinctively that this was not a simple tool. It was a relic of something far darker. Images of rituals and incantations flickered through his mind. A sudden noise behind him froze him in place, a crack, sharp and unmistakable. He spun around, heart in his throat. Out of the shadows emerged the figure, clearer now, standing just beyond the tree line, its dark eyes boring into him. At that moment, Richard knew. This presence wasn't just a ghost haunting the night. It was Dinah herself.
"Richard," the figure whispered, voice echoing like a haunting lullaby. "You called for me." He could hardly breathe. The truth crashed over him like a wave. Dinah wasn't just a specter tied to the past. She had a purpose. Anguish-filled memories surged forth, the tales of her life mixed with the whispers of malevolence. What had she done to Eleanor? Leave her!
Alone! He shouted, fists clenching as adrenaline surged through him. What do you want with me? The figure took a step closer, an eerie smile tugging at its lips. What I want? Oh, Richard, you're already mine. Suddenly the air turned electric, a pulse thrumming through the ground. The stones flared brightly, shaking the forest, and Richard staggered back, vision spinning. Visions of Eleanor bound in shadows flashed before him, trapped in a nightmare from which he feared she could never escape. The laughter rolled back in, disjointed and sinister, echoing through the clearing. Richard's heart raced as he turned to run, the dark force behind him pulling at his very soul. He had to get out, to find Garrett, to uncover the truth. But the darkness had other plans. A bone-chilling scream erupted in the distance, Eleanor's voice, wrapping around him like chains. And then everything went dark once more. What awaited him in the depths of the forest? Who else would become part of Dinah's sinister game? As the darkness closed in around him, Richard knew the answers would come at a terrifying price. Richard gasped for breath as the enveloping darkness receded, leaving behind a lingering chill. He lay sprawled on the forest floor, heart pounding loudly in his ears. The echo of Eleanor's scream haunted him still, an unwelcome reminder of the dark reality he found himself trapped in. Struggling to his feet, he squinted into the shadows, searching for any sign of Garrett or the malevolence that had been pursuing him. "Garrett!" he shouted, desperation clawing at his throat once more. The woods swallowed his voice, leaving him in an oppressive silence, thick and heavy. As he stumbled forward, the ground felt unfamiliar beneath his feet, undulating, alive with something sinister. Each step brought the nauseating scent of decay that clawed at his senses. He'd seen Dinah. He could still feel the way her dark eyes had pierced through him, as if seeing straight into his soul. With every thought of her, fear twisted tighter around his chest. Suddenly, a soft whisper echoed in the distance, not the laugh of Dinah, but something worse. It seemed to come from all around him, buzzing like a swarm of angry hornets. Richard froze. He turned slowly, scanning every inch of the forest, but the darkness concealed any threat lurking just out of reach. "I need to find Garrett," he muttered, more to himself than anything, as if the act of speaking would summon his friend. But there was no response, only the constant rustle of leaves and the faint crack of twigs underfoot. In the eerie silence, dread and uncertainty took root. Had something happened to Garrett? His mind raced with terrible possibilities. Alone in this nightmarish forest, Richard felt exposed, each shadow threatening to swallow him whole. He moved forward once more, pushing branches aside, when a sharp pain sliced through his hand. He pulled back, staring at the small cut, crimson blooming against his pale skin. It hurt, but the pain felt distant, overshadowed by the overwhelming sensation of being watched. The rustle of leaves was now a shuffling of feet, deliberate and slow. "Come now, Richard." The voice, a velvet whisper, slithered through the air, chilling him to the bone. "You wouldn't abandon your friend, would you?" He spun around, eyes wide in terror. There was no source to the voice, just shadows that seemed to dance and flicker through the trees. Panic began to claw at him, and he took a step back. But the weight of invisible gazes bore down on him, driving him deeper into the heart of the forest. "Richard!" The sound of his name, now emerging from the darkness, shot through him like a bullet of hope. "Garrett!" But as Richard stumbled forward, a low growl suddenly rang out, sending him skittering to the side. Before him lay a massive pit, black and bottomless. He peered into the abyss, a primal fear rooting him in place. It felt as if the forest was alive, eager to consume him, to pull him into that darkness. Without thinking, he turned away, but tripped over a root, falling into the surrounding mist. He landed hard, gasping as he scrambled to regain his footing. Just then, Dinah's figure emerged from the haze, her eyes glinting with delight. "You can't hide from me, Richard. You're tied to this place, Richard." The pit behind him sunk deeper into his thoughts. Faces, screams, memories swam through his mind. He felt the weight of their despair, and suddenly he understood. "Eleanor?" he whispered as the pieces clicked into place. All those tortured souls, trapped, just like Garrett, just like Eleanor. This was the heart of Dinah's power. But perhaps this wasn't just a fight for survival. Perhaps in uncovering her dark history lay a chance to save them all. The shadows around Dinah ebbed and pulsed. The air thickened, heavy with malevolence. Sweat beaded on Richard's forehead. Would he have the strength to face her and unearth the truth? Before he could consider his next move, the ground rumbled ominously, and Dinah's smile twisted into something grotesque. "We're only just beginning, Richard." Clenching his fists, he realized he had to make a choice, to confront the horrors or let them consume him. But as shadows flickered menacingly, Richard felt an icy grip around his heart. Would he learn the truth or be lost to the darkness forever? The answer awaited him in the depths of the void. Richard's heart raced as the ground shuddered beneath his feet, the pit behind him whispering promises of despair. The shadows around Dinah tightened, swirling like a storm ready to break. "You didn't truly think you could escape, did you?" Her voice dripped with sarcasm, dark and intoxicating. He fought the urge to flee. No, not again. He had to find Garrett, and maybe even Eleanor. Richard took a deep breath, forcing himself to meet Dinah's piercing gaze. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, the defiance bolstering his wavering resolve. "Want?" she echoed, that twisted smile never wavering. "I want what you owe me. You've walked into my domain, and now it's time for you to pay." The air shimmered around her, the forest pulsating in thrall to her presence. Richard could feel the souls trapped within its roots, their pain intoxicating, a bittersweet melody haunting his thoughts. He felt a tremor in the ground beneath him, an unsettling reminder of the trap he was in. Shadows crept closer, wrapping around his feet like living tendrils. Richard's throat tightened. "Where's Garrett?" he demanded, scanning the relentless darkness. "Ah, Garrett." Dinah paused, tilting her head as if considering a delicate choice. "He's closer than you think." Her laughter echoed, filling the night air with malice, and Richard's pulse quickened. The ground buried beneath his feet felt colder, as if it were absorbing his fear. With a sudden surge, a figure erupted from the shadows, and Richard gasped, his breath catching in his throat. It was Garrett, but he wore a haunted expression, eyes wide with horror. "Richard, run!" he screamed as he staggered forward, tripping over unseen roots and falling to his knees. Why? Richard felt torn between his friend and the darkness closing in. Why? Richard felt torn. Dinah stepped closer, her voice a low purr. Because, dear Richard, this is not just a game. Each step you take makes you a part of my playground. She gestured toward the vast abyss, the promise of eternal suffering glowing within. Run, and you'll leave him behind. Stay, and perhaps you'll learn the truth. But at what cost? Garrett's panicked breaths filled the space between them, desperation dancing in his wide eyes. "Don't listen to her! We have to go!" "Going where?" Dinah's laughter rang out, echoing like a sinister wind. "You think the forest will spare you? It hungers for those like you, sacrificed for its insatiable desire." She pointed into the darkness, where faces twisted, filled with agony. They never left. They chose to stay. For eternity. Richard staggered backward, the implication smothering him. He shook his head. "No, this isn't happening. I won't be trapped." Gritting his teeth, he lunged toward Garrett, but the forest snarled, branches writhing like snakes to ensnare him. Suddenly, a piercing scream cut through the night. It came from behind Dinah, echoing like an old wound reopening. Richard's heart ached as he recognized a sound. It was Eleanor, still lost within this nightmare. "Eleanor!" he cried, the name torn from him as panic pushed him to the edge. "Save her, then, if you dare." Dinah's voice was honeyed with malice. "But remember, every choice has a price." A dark mist began to swirl around them, growing thicker, suffocating the air with dread. Richard felt Garrett's arm grip his shoulder, a lifeline in the storm of chaos. "What do we do?" his friend panted, fear threatening to break him. Richard looked into the blackness, desperation igniting within him. "We save Eleanor, and then we end this." As he surged forward, Dinah's laughter cascaded around them, filling the forest with echoes of despair and terror. "Fools, you'll regret this choice." Shadows howled, an unholy chorus, as Richard propelled himself deeper into darkness. He felt the void pulling at him, trying to draw him back. But his resolve was stronger, ignited by fury and a flickering hope. What awaited him within that abyss? Would he uncover the truth, or would he become yet another lost soul? The ground shook once more, a warning or a promise. Somehow the answer lay ahead, far beyond the walls of despair. Suddenly, a flicker of light broke through the darkness, a fleeting glimpse of something real. Richard, heart racing, reached for it. But the question hung in the air like smoke, filled with dread. What would he have to face to grasp that light? Richard fought against the creeping shadows, the oppressive weight of Dinah's laughter hanging in the air like a death knell. The light flickered just ahead, a wisp of hope amidst the chaos. He and Garrett surged forward, the mist swirling and clawing at their backs, eager to pull them into the depths of despair. "Stick close!" Richard shouted, grasping Garrett's wrist tightly. They stumbled through the underbrush, thorns scraping at their skin, drawing blood as the forest screamed for their surrender. Each step felt like a defiance against an unholy force, yet the darkness retaliated.
Branches snapped and split, the shrieking voices of those lost echoing around them. "Eleanor!" Richard called again, desperation flooding his voice. He couldn't just leave her behind. The flickering light seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, urging him onward. "Over there!" Garrett gasped, pointing ahead as another scream pierced the thick air, more frantic, more real. Richard squinted. Yes, there, through the trees. He could see a silhouette, illuminated by that strange glow. It was Eleanor, caught in a web of writhing shadows, fighting to break free. "Help me!" her voice broke through, raw and painful. Richard's heart ached. He drew closer, the world narrowing down to her cries. "Eleanor, I'm coming!" But as he lunged for her, something latched onto his ankle. One of the living shadows, a claw formed from darkness. It yanked him backward, pulling him away from her and deep into the unknown. "Richard!" Garrett cried, sprinting back to his side, eyes wide with panic. They fought against the encroaching dread, but Richard felt his strength waning. The shadow tightened its grip, and Richard's breath came quick and shallow. He could see Eleanor struggling, her face twisted in terror, each moment feeding the darkness that clung to them. "Let go! I won't leave you!" he shouted, trying to wrench free. With a final desperate effort, Richard gripped Garrett's arm, and together they twisted away from the shadow's grasp, the two of them crashing into the thicket. "Keep moving," Garrett urged, urgency flooding his voice. They burst into a clearing, where the light burned brighter. Richard stumbled. The glowing aura revealed twisted trees, adorned with skeletal branches, silhouetted against the waning moon. In the center of the clearing stood a figure, not Dinah this time, but a woman shrouded in light, her features blurred.
If she were a mirage. "Who are you?" Garrett shouted, squinting against the brilliance. "Your ally," the woman replied, her voice resonant, full of warmth. "You must find the heart of darkness to save her." Richard felt an inexplicable connection to her. "Eleanor's heart?" he inquired, breathless. "Her spirit is faint," the woman observed, sadness weaving through her words. "Dinah holds it, shackled to her desires. You must confront her, piece by piece, until the true heart is revealed." "Piece by piece?" Garrett echoed, confusion in his tone. "Release those bound in shadows. Their cries will guide you. Face the past, for only then can you free Eleanor." Before Richard could ask more, the figure flickered, dimming with each spoken word, the shadows encroaching again. "No, wait!" he called, but it was too late. The light flickered out, plunging them back into the choking dark. "Richard, we have to go!" Garrett pulled him. "Now!" And yet, here in the darkness, Richard felt a pull. A deadly awareness gnawed at him, intertwined with a flicker of hope and an overwhelming dread. The shadows thickened around them, whispering promises, beckoning him to join their chorus. "Piece by piece," he muttered, breathing heavily. "But where do we even start?" Garrett stumbled, twisting around. "They're watching, Richard. We can't stay." Richard stood frozen, staring into the depths of the darkness, where the screams twisted and formed a shape, an echo of Dinah's laughter, haunting and sinister. He felt the weight of their choices pressing down on him. "How do we fight her?" he murmured, caught in the clash of despair and resolve. Then, just beyond the shroud, he saw distant figures, faces, reaching out, yearning for freedom. Could these lost spirits guide them? Or would they, too, be drawn into Dinah's web? The shadows danced closer, and Richard stepped forward, heart pounding. He could feel the forest's hunger intensifying. Time was slipping away, and he had to act before it swallowed them both whole. "Piece by piece," he whispered, determination igniting. The forest shifted around him, the whispers beckoning.
What waited behind the shadows? Was it Eleanor or another twisted trap that would lead to their doom? As Richard and Garrett moved deeper, the darkness roared, hungry for them, holding secrets they might not survive to unveil. And there it was again, a faint glimmer flickering in the distance. With one last glance back at Garrett, Richard plunged forward into the heart of darkness, ready to face whatever den awaited him. But what truth would unravel with every piece set free? Richard's pulse throbbed against his temples as he pushed deeper into the abyss. The shadows writhed and twisted around him, urging him to turn back, to surrender to despair. Each breath felt like an affront to the darkness, the air thickening with an oppressive dread. "Garrett, stay close!" he shouted. Every instinct screamed at him to look behind, but he forced himself forward, gripping the glimmering hope that had sparked against the engulfing gloom. "Richard," Garrett's voice trembled, barely audible through the grasping mist. "What if we're just walking into a trap?"
"We don't have a choice," Richard replied, fear gnawing at his insides. "Eleanor needs us." They pressed on, surrendering to the light that pulsed weakly on the horizon, an enticing beacon amidst the encroaching nightmare. Then, just as they approached the glow, a cacophony of terrified screams erupted around them, swirling like a cyclone of torment. "No, no!" Richard shouted, clutching his ears as shadows sprang to life, barrier after barrier collapsing around them. Faces twisted in agony emerged from the darkness, lost souls trapped in torment, their hands reaching out in desperation. "Richard, we need to stop!" Garrett gasped, panic flooding his voice. "They want to drag us down just like Eleanor." "No!" Richard yelled, shaking off doubt. He couldn't lose another person, not Eleanor, not any of them. But even as he shouted his resolve, the weight of despair pressed down harder. One by one, the figure stepped forward, their faces morphing into memories he recognized, each aspect a fragment of his past, feeding into his worst fears. Shadows of old friends, long lost to time, their eyes hollow and pleading. "Help us, Richard! You can't leave us here!" they cried, their voices mingling with the laughter of Dinah, echoing tauntingly in his mind. "Shut up!" Richard screamed, stumbling back, the shadows clawing at his heart. "Focus, Richard," Garrett urged, standing his ground close to Richard. "We have to remember the words of that woman. We need to find the ones who can guide us." "But they used to be my friends. How can I just leave them?" Richard struggled against the tide of gnawing guilt. "Eleanor is depending on us." Garrett pulled him further into the glow, where the shapes began to swirl, revealing more of the light that beckoned at their core. A heady surge of warmth pierced the icy grip of the shadows around them. Richard's heart raced. "Piece by piece," he muttered to himself, "we have to free the lost." With newfound determination, he stepped towards the first wailing figure, a silhouette of a long-lost neighbor, eyes filled with sorrow, at the mercy of the unrelenting darkness. Words danced on Richard's lips, memory sparking like a match in the dark. "Melanie, I remember you," he cried. "You were always there for us. I won't abandon you." As he reached out, the shadow shrank back, its ghastly figure flickering. He felt a strange connection, the soft tendrils of sunlight pushing against the dark. But then it twisted and morphed into a sly grin, a look of mockery. "Do you think they'll forgive you, Richard? Or will they just remember how you let them go?" "No!" he yelled through the crushing ache in his chest. The weight of his guilt bore down on him. Yet somehow, in this moment, he pushed forward. He pushed against regret, fighting through. As light surged and broke through the shadows, illuminating the clearing further, he felt the winds shift. The laughter of Dinah receded, a thread unraveling in the darkness, echoing stories of betrayal. "Piece by piece," Garrett shouted beside him, echoing Richard's resolve. and together they surged toward the glimmering heart of the vortex, their link back to the living and a crack at freeing Eleanor. But just as the light enveloped them, wrapping warmly around their frail bodies, a piercing howl ripped through the air. The shadows rushed back, a flood of rage spilling from the very heart of darkness. "Welcome back," a chilling voice slithered through the forest, grating against their bones. Dinah emerged from shadows, her face carved of fury and despair. "You think you can break my hold? No one leaves my realm." With a flick of her wrist, the darkness exploded, and suddenly Richard and Garrett found themselves engulfed in a maelstrom of flailing shadows, their forms ripping apart at the seams. "Richard!" Garrett's scream was swallowed by the storm. "What now?" Richard gasped, eyes darting toward Dinah, who stood with a wicked smile, a storm of shadows swirling menacingly around her. "Piece by piece," Dinah echoed, flicking her eyes toward Eleanor's distant chant trapped in the dark void. Now Richard knew. He was in a race not just against time, but against the very heart of despair itself. As they stepped deeper into the swirling shadows, the truth echoed hauntingly. Rescue or ruin depended on unearthing secrets he wasn't ready to face. What lay beyond the storm of torment? And would freeing the others lead them to the heart of Eleanor's darkness, or only plunge them all further into despair? "Find the heart," he whispered, the desperate urge fueling his every step into the undulating darkness. What would he uncover as the past clawed its way back to the surface? The shadows swirled violently, churning like a tempest of despair. Richard's heart raced as he and Garrett struggled against the howling gale of tormented souls. Dinah's laughter echoed, piercing through the cacophony, taunting them with each wicked chuckle. "Piece by piece," she shrieked, the words dripping with malevolence. "Let's see how long you can hold on to your precious hope." "Garrett, we have to keep moving," Richard gasped, his voice nearly swallowed by the howling winds. He could feel the cold fingers of the shadows grasping at him, pulling him back into their depths. "Right, but where do we go?" Garrett shouted, his eyes wide with terror. Every direction looked the same. The oppressive darkness stung, clouding their thoughts, shattering their resolve. A sudden shift in the air. Richard's instincts flared. "There," he pointed, toward a flicker of light, a ghostly, shimmering essence fighting against the consuming dark. They plunged toward it, desperately forging a path through the onslaught. As they neared, Richard glimpsed familiar faces, his lost friends again among the shadows, their mouths twisted in silent screams, eyes hollow and full of betrayal. "Don't listen to them," Garrett warned, pulling Richard forward. "They're trying to confuse us." "Please, help us," shouted one figure, its voice a rasp. It was Melanie again, her features contorted in anguish. "You owe it to us, Richard. Don't leave us here to suffer forever." Richard faltered, guilt clenching his heart like a vice. "I can't abandon you," he shouted, reaching out. Instantly, the ground shifted under their feet, the light dimming as if the very darkness fed off his hesitation. "Remember what she said," Garrett cried, shaking him. "We have to find the heart. Focus, Richard." "Right, the heart, the link back to the living." "Melanie," Richard choked. But the flickering light dimmed, twisting into sinister shadows that warped her face into a caricature of despair. "You don't deserve to escape," she whispered, as several other figures lunged at him, hands clawing. "No!" Richard shouted, breaking free from the nightmare's grasp, sprinting toward the glimmer that beckoned him. The shadows recoiled, their tendrils hissing. "You value your friends above all. You're weak." Dinah's voice ricocheted around him, drowning out the pleas. "Shut up!" Richard yelled, adrenaline surging through him. I'll never give up. Somehow, he found the strength to push forward, every step igniting a flicker of warmth in the inky blackness. The other soul's cries faded into the background as he zeroed in on the light. Sweat soaked his brow, and he could taste metallic fear on his tongue. A shadow surged upward from below, its form an amorphous terror, twisting and churning. "You cannot evade the truth," it screeched, its voice a cacophony of tortured souls. "You must face it. You'll endure nothing but despair." "I will set them free," Richard cried back defiantly, his hands now enveloping the flickering light more fiercely. He could almost hear Eleanor's faint song among the chaos, guiding him closer. The brilliance surged, swirling around him. Suddenly, he was no longer alone. Garrett stood beside him, fierce determination in his eyes. "Together," he nodded, almost unrecognizable with conviction. With one powerful tug, Richard and Garrett harnessed the luminescence, plunging it into the cold, oppressive darkness. The shadows writhed violently, erupting with shrieks of rage and confusion. The ground shook beneath them. Fissures opened wide, revealing depths of nothingness where the dark souls cried out, grasping in vain. The brilliant light fought back, pushing away the shadows. Yet, as the darkness retreated, something sinister emerged from its depths. A dull rhythm pulsed through the ground, slow, ominous. A dark form wriggled free, adorned with sinister herbs and tainted bones. A grotesque abomination of lost spirits melded into a single horrific being. "Fools!" it bellowed, its voice like thunder. "You are too late. You've awakened the master of all souls. His heart is mine now." Richard stumbled back, heart racing. "Garrett, what do we do?" But Garrett's face went pale. We fight. We have to fight." The shadows shrieked and spun wildly, the heart of despair rising like an unholy specter before them. Richard's pulse quickened, dread coiling in his stomach. The shadows wouldn't just let them go. This was only the beginning. The heart of darkness was upon them, and they stood to face the embodiment of years of nightmares. Would they find a way to silence it, or would they be consumed in this never-ending twilight of misery? With the pulse of dread echoing around them, Richard gritted his teeth. "We're not done yet," he said, stepping forward, bracing for what lay ahead. What had Dinah truly become? What secrets lay twisted within the depths of despair? And could they truly face their darkest fears to rescue Eleanor, or would they lose themselves to the shadows forever? Richard's heart raced as he faced the pulsating mass of shadows before him, the embodiment of years of sorrow, despair, and unredeemed souls. The air thickened with dread, but he locked eyes with Garrett, their shared defiance igniting a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. "We have to fight," Garrett urged, determination lining his voice. The grotesque figure loomed, an amalgamation of lost souls, a swirling storm of fear that sought to drown them in its darkness. The forest trembled around them, but Richard's resolve solidified. Their fight wasn't just against Dinah. It was a battle for Eleanor, for the lost souls, and for their very lives. "Stay together!" Richard yelled as the darkness surged forward, craving their anguish. He grasped Garrett's wrist, their bond unbreakable. "We need to bring light to this darkness." As the shadow dived toward them, Richard pushed forward, channeling all his fear and heartbreak into a single plea. "Eleanor, we're coming for you!" The shadow hesitated, a flicker of recognition crackling through its dark form. Richard seized the moment, the luminescence within him igniting like a wildfire. With a roar, Garrett joined him, their combined will surging into the void. The shadows recoiled as a brilliant light erupted from the core of their beings, illuminating the depths of despair and uncovering faces in the mist, lost friends and loved ones reaching out, whispering for freedom. The monstrous figure swayed, bolstered by their unity, but fighting fiercely against it. "You seek the heart? You will only find pain," it screeched, a cacophony of voices shrieking in horror. But Richard felt the warmth of the light embracing him, enveloping Garrett. "This darkness thrives on sorrow. We won't let it win." With every breath, he tapped into the memories of love, Eleanor's laughter, moments shared, promises made. Each realization was a piece of the heart that would unravel the shadows gripping them. "Together," they shouted, and with renewed strength they charged forward. Hand in hand, they unleashed the power of their glowing hearts, not just as a weapon, but as an offering to the lost. "We will connect with the light of every soul who has vanished." As they pushed toward the mass, a blinding wave of warmth surged through, reverberating with the memories of those lost, friendships, laughter, and a shared humanity stronger than suffering. The shadows writhed violently, but with each pulse of light, the figures of the past whispered words of encouragement, their spirits intertwining with Richard and Garrett's resolve. In that moment, Dinah's dark laughter erupted, more furious than before. "You think you can wrap chains of hope around my depths? You are mere mortals." Yet Richard felt different. He was not alone. He was part of a collective yearning for freedom. They advanced, the light coalescing, a radiant beacon against the onslaught of despair. "We are more than your suffering," Richard shouted to the shadows, a bold proclamation declaring their right to joy. In a final push, they breached the dark heart, and with it unleashed Eleanor's name like a battle cry through the chaos. "Eleanor! We choose you! We choose love and light!" The shadows screamed, a cacophony of rage, as the light surged through darkness. The hideous figure began to fracture, cracks forming as the radiance sliced through darkness. Finally, with a sound like shattering glass, the mass erupted, spewing the trapped souls free into the night, their faces alight with newfound hope. And there she was. Eleanor stood before them, her gentle spirit glowing amidst the storm. The darkness around them receded, leaving only the radiant light that swirled in the aftermath. "Richard, Garrett," her voice was soft, yet powerful, echoing through the clearing. "You came for me." In that moment, Richard felt a wave of relief wash over him, predicting every cry for liberation had not been in vain. He rushed towards her, enveloping her in his arms. "We did it, Eleanor! You're free!" Garrett joined them, laughter mingling with tears as the remnants of sorrow melted away into the ether. But even as they embraced, a chill swept through the air. Dinah's shadowy remnants were fading, but in the remnants of her laughter echoed the promise of darkness lurking, still alive, waiting for the next moment of vulnerability. Richard knew the fight was not entirely over. Shadows, though scattered, could return. But they had faced the heart of it and survived. As the forest light began to illuminate the path ahead, Richard clutched Eleanor's hands, feeling her warmth against his chest. "We'll face it together," he promised, his voice firm. And united, they stepped away from the remnants of despair, toward the dawn breaking in the distance, a renewed resolve igniting their souls. The journey was not merely to defeat Dinah's darkness. It was to embrace each other and to be the light amid the shadows. Together, always. Now it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.